Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our second episode of Compliance by Design, the podcast for legal and compliance leaders. Now, you might have noticed I'm not PD, and that's because we're doing something a bit different with this episode. Now, there's a lot of noise in the AI and legal tech market right now, so we wanted to cut through that and share what we see actually working based on what we're doing day to day and what we've learned building and using tech that our lawyers rely on day to day. Now, to do that, I've invited our CTO, Paul, to join us. Before joining Avantia, Paul ran AI teams at BlackRock and Bloomberg, so he is best placed to break it down. Paul, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Laurence. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure. You're right. So kicking off, it feels to me at least like every week there's a new tool, new AI tool in the market, including the launch of GPT-5, which is my LinkedIn feed is full of. By my count, there have been 50 new legal tech solutions come out of stealth in the last few months. Now, some of them, they sound amazing, but repeatedly the feedback I'm hearing is when you try them, they're just not living up to the hype. So what's your take on what we're seeing in the market?
I think like the first wave of the legal Gen AI companies, the promise was that because Gen AI gives you this amazing like kind of breadth of access to problems, right? You can generate text. It feels like you can go and solve like literally any text generation problem in the world with it. And so the sort of promise of the initial wave of legal technology platforms were they were going to be like totally holistic, replace a paralegal, replace a lawyer type platforms. And I think you still have those companies. They started off, they were training their own large language models. Increasingly, you see now they're migrating to using the third-party platforms. And so they're sending data to a GPT-4 or they're sending data to Anthropic or something like this to do the data processing for them and then getting it back and housing that in some of their own software. And that was like kind of wave number one. I think that's where you're seeing people like kind of starting to think, well, yeah, but you're not really replacing enough, right? Like kind of from a starting point of like, you're literally going to automate the entire job of a paralegal to what we have now. Like, and I think that's like, you're not seeing that replacement. You've got this other set of solutions that have sprung up. And I think these type of companies have always been around, but you're seeing that more and more with Gen AI now, where people are trying to solve, instead of the whole legal platform problem, trying to solve like one specific problem. Like I can extract a certain set of data points from commercial contracts, or I can draft a particular type of clause in a contract or something like this, or I can complete a bit of a compliance workflow. Like I can basically summarize some compliance data into a memo, that sort of thing. And they're trying to solve like one or two problems very well. And that's the kind of reaction, I think, to the fact that like kind of doing the big platform play is hard. And actually like the Gen AI tooling that you've got at the moment isn't that kind of great replacement technology that like kind of it was hoped to be originally. And so it's like, all right, well, if we focus on a very specific problem, we do a load of engineering, we use a load of other methodologies, maybe we can solve that one problem very well. And then we can get into the market that way. And so I think that that's like kind of the general shape of the market and probably why that initial kind of hype wave like feels now like it was slightly oversold, because the hype was really around the big platforms, right? Like kind of it was, we're going to replace like legal jobs wholesale rather than we're going to help a bit, or we're going to replace like kind of the marking up of a particular document.
Yeah. And that's, as you remember when it will launch in OpenAI passed the bar exam, worry was it was going to come for lawyers' jobs, which is obviously not what we're seeing now. But with that in mind, when we're looking at those solutions and given the evolution in the market, well, what's your recommendation? What's hype? And then actually what is going to solve that solution? Like what should people be looking at?
Well, I think if you put like kind of the current hype wave in its historical context, you've now had like 25 years-ish worth of like enterprises purchasing SaaS solutions. And so you have a situation where desktops are extremely crowded, where like kind of adding in another piece of technology to those desktops is kind of adding another bit of cognitive load into the system for the people who are using that like technology platform. And so like kind of, I think if I'm like kind of, I've been an enterprise technology manager in the past, and then when you're kind of trying to assess sort of my stack, now it's got these like kind of 10 to 15 SaaS applications. It's got some self-built applications. It's got these new technology solutions coming out. And when you're looking at it, you're like, all right, well, how do I make sense of it? How do I know whether buying like another SaaS solution is going to really move the dial for my users, for the people at my organization? And I think like kind of what you've got to do is step back and say, okay, what workflows am I trying to complete as an organization? So like kind of in my organization, I will have a set of legal and compliance workflows. And I would encourage people to look at them as end-to-end business processes. And each end-to-end business processes, say they've got like kind of 5 to 10 tasks within them. Like what solutions are you using for those 5 to 10 tasks? How integrated are they? And how does throwing another bit of SaaS, or whether it's a platform SaaS or like kind of a point solution SaaS, like help my level of integratedness, like kind of help my level of data processing? Yeah. And bear in mind that a big part of that is going to be helping the amount of cognitive load that I'm putting on my users to learn a new tool and to do a 15th thing on top of the 14 that they're already doing. And that's how I would look at it. Yeah, I think like what you see in the legal profession in particular is for all of the like SaaS that exists in the market, the legal profession is still very heavily rooted in Outlook and Word, or email clients and Microsoft Word generally. And so you're looking at your enterprise stack and you're thinking, well, I've got Outlook and Word. I'm 100% going to have to be running that long term. Nobody's really trying to replace that. I maybe have a time tracking app and my other kind of 5 or 6 apps that I'm using, like a workflow management app or something like this. And so if I'm going to throw more software at that, what am I actually really achieving back in terms of having holistic, well integrated, well serviced workflows?
So we're obviously a law firm, and you're building the tech. Like, how did you go about solving the challenges for Avantia?
Yeah, so Avantia, like you say, like when I joined, we're a law firm like any other law firm. Well, legal and compliance business like any other legal and compliance business, really. We have workflow. Those workflows, when I joined, had SaaS applications in them, some self-built software, a lot of Word and Outlook. So when we started looking at kind of AI landscape when I joined, it was like, okay, yeah, great. You've got like kind of Gen AI. We want to embed that in our workflows as much as possible. We're not going to replace Word and Outlook. So can we integrate somehow with Word and Outlook and be as helpful as we possibly can in the context of workflows where Word and Outlook are going to be like kind of the dominant technologies that people are using to communicate and author documents? And like how can we basically replace all other existing bits of SaaS with our own stuff, right? So how can we, instead of looking at like let's wedge another SaaS application into the workflow, let's fulfill like what was part of the original promise of Gen AI, which is let's just replace everything with Gen AI that is replaceable, right? Like let's do a whole like kind of replacement of our existing suite of tools. And we've largely done that. So there's like our technology platform. Well, Ava basically exists as a Word plugin, an Outlook plugin, and these are software applications that can live within the Microsoft stack, access Microsoft data, be able to manipulate Microsoft applications automatically. So we have like our AI agent is embedded in both Word and Outlook. So it's there at the point at which the lawyer is using it. And then for all of that kind of workflow tracking, document management, like kind of all of that, all of those other functions that surround that, we've just built in-house because we think that we can do that better than anyone else. And so, and one of the reasons that we've done this is because if you think about how you're going to assist people through a workflow, and I alluded to this a little bit at the top with the 15 different applications in the enterprise stack, your big blocker to AI-enabled automation in that 15 application stack is how do I get out all of the data that's relevant to answering any one question or any one tasks within my user's workflow? How do I pull that all out into one place where it's accessible, where it's passed in and transformed into a format that is like kind of easily reusable by like whatever automation tools that I have? And so yeah, so it's that kind of two things. It's like for us, it's meeting the lawyers where they are, not expecting people to go and totally change their methods of working, and then removing SaaS applications and replacing them with something better rather than just sticking another tool into the stack. Those are the kind of two, I think, like guiding principles behind what we're trying to do. And then the third bit, which is more of a sort of computer architecture question, it's if you want to maximize the use of Gen AI and maximize your ability to do automation within an enterprise workflow, you have to be in control of your data end to end, right? Like you have to have it in managed in a way that you can build reusable applications across different modalities.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to I mean, that's a really good point and something I wanted to dig into, because I was reading a survey the other day that said it was US GPs, and it said 60% of those it surveyed said the biggest reason they're not implementing AI is security and privacy concerns. So for our audience and for our customers and for our lawyers, obviously and for us, that's a big concern. So how are you approaching that? How do you think about security?
Well, I think for us, one of the things that we were conscious about when we were designing Ava was not to be sending data to third-party companies wherever possible, right? So we actually don't send data to third-party companies at all. And the reason for this, especially with like kind of LLM technologies, was twofold. First of all, like kind of if people are training their own generative AI model, you have this issue of kind of data leakage, which people are starting to become familiar with, which is if you train a Gen AI model on customer A's data and then use that model to answer questions for customers B, it's very likely, and it's actually impossible to stop it from sometimes regurgitating customer A's data in customer B's answer, which is obviously a huge problem in the legal profession. So for that reason, we decided that like kind of training like large language models across different like kind of data sets was totally unreasonable thing to do. So that's thing number one. Now, with the third party, where the industry's gone with sending data to third party APIs, a lot of the third party terms, especially like kind of for enterprise contracts, will say they don't use your data for training purposes. But in those cases, you're still sending data to an almost exclusively US company who will store your data on almost exclusively US servers. You have a data sovereignty issue off the bat, right? Your data becomes localized in the US, and for many businesses that might not be a desirable outcome, or many businesses outside of the US that's not a desirable outcome. And then the third thing in there is, and you've had Sam Altman of OpenAI fame talking about this recently, there is no sense of, or there's no legal restrictions around attorney-client privilege with data that's been sent to a third-party AI model. So when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, yes, I want to use the kind of text generation components of large language models. But I think for these reasons, for the data leakage reason, for data sovereignty purposes, and for the kind of opaque issues around attorney-client privilege, which people don't really understand yet, it's unreasonable for me as an enterprise engineering manager to say that it's okay for me to send our customers' data to a third-party API under those conditions, right? So what we do instead is we run similar kind of open source large language models on servers that like kind of we own, and that removes these issues from our tech stack effectively.
Yeah, okay. And I guess if we were to break that down, if you're a GC or a CCO, what are the three questions then that they should be asking their legal tech provider?
Yeah, so number one, is my data being used to train generative AI models that are used across multiple customers? Question number one. Question number two is, can I get a complete list of all of the jurisdictions in which my data is stored, with guarantees around like kind of that I will be notified if those storage locations change in any way? And the third is similar, like kind of if you're sending, I guess this one is, we already know that people don't know the answer. So I would say if my data is being sent to a third party company, maybe you have an internal conversation to understand what your attitude towards attorney-client privilege risk is for taking on that external risk. And that would be more you sending my data to a third-party AI company, and then you have to have a conversation with your chief risk officer or whoever fulfills that role for you.
Yeah, about the level of risk. No, I think that's, especially in this space, things are moving so quickly that that's kind of really handy starter. Now, and you see me smiling as I ask this, because I always think that crystal ball questions are silly. Especially in this space, because things are moving so fast that in 2 years, the landscape could look totally different. So I am going to ask it, but let's keep it tighter. Next 12 months, what does the landscape look like?
Yeah, I'll answer. I'm going to answer in two parts, I think. One is, I'm going to hedge my bets a little bit. So the first bit is like what I think we're pretty sure is going to happen. There's been a very big bubble around of Gen AI tools to begin with, and some of that bubble was around like synergy between people and technology. So like a person, this is the whole sort of AI is not going to take your job, but a person using AI is going to. And the second bit of that bubble has been, well, yeah, but the AI now looks so good, like Gen AI looks so good that I'm now starting to assume that it's going to automate the job of like a scientist or something like this, right? I think like kind of what you'll see increasingly flatten is, yes, the synergy argument like is strong. And companies who've bet on the synergy argument and make tools that people love using and that really add value to a person, right? Not like remove a person, but really add value to a person's day to day. Those companies will do very well. And you'll start to see the automation argument fall away slightly. So that I think is a reasonably safe bet as you go into from your kind of peak hype cycle to your kind of plateau of usefulness, or I can't remember what they call it. So that's thing number one. I think that's a reasonably safe bet as to what you're going to see over the next 12 months. My sort of thing number two is, and this is the bet hedging part, is what would you have to see in the general conversation? What would you have to see coming out of the academic literature or see being claimed as achievements for you to really think that that things had changed substantially? And I think if you know the academic literature reasonably well, you'll see that actually like the gen models themselves, like kind of that's reaching a kind of, it's the next wave of innovation won't be directly like kind of, let's just make a bigger one or let's make a slightly different one. There'll be a second like kind of research paradigm that you will inject into that will kick everything off again. And so you would have to see realistic like kind of examples of AI systems moving away from what they do at the moment, which is essentially mimicking human behavior or mimicking language, to building systems which really have an internalized understanding of informational language. So you've asked me before to describe like kind of what the difference between those things is for my children, and how I would describe it for my children is broadly like what's happening at the moment is you've got a Gen AI model and it can mimic something. So in the same way that if you have like an octopus, like bottom of the ocean, starts mimicking a rock, the octopus hasn't transformed itself into a rock. It's still an octopus. It just now looks like a rock. That's mimicking, right? It's being able to look at an object and say like kind of, I will capture some superficial properties of the object that can fool somebody into thinking that I'm that object, but I'm not that object. And so what you would need to see to move beyond that kind of mimicry argument is people being able to understand that these two things that looked identical, one of them was created by some kind of millennia old sedimentary process and one of them's created by a biological process. You need to be able to think about things in that depth, right? To move beyond the superficial. And we certainly haven't seen that yet.
So to recap then, what we're saying is the future will be rocks that look like rocks, but they're AI.
The future will be rocks that are actually rocks, or octopuses that like have found a methodology that allows them to transform themselves into actual rocks and no longer be octopuses. Although that brings the question of, if you're an octopus that has discovered a method for transforming yourself into an actual literal rock, can the rock then by definition transform itself back into an actual literal octopus?
I mean, that feels like a fantastic place to end.
It's not going to get any better, is it?
No, I that can be an audience question. Write in, tell us what you think. They can go from there. But generally, that was, obviously we chat about this quite regularly, and I've written a bunch on legal AI kind of working with you. But every time we chat, I learn something new, rocks and octopuses. So thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully we've answered your questions, but if there's anything else that we didn't cover, anything you want to ask or you want to know more about, you can either connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm Laurence Baker, or you can connect with Paul Gaskell. Both the links to our LinkedIns are in the description, or you can drop me an email, which is on the screen, at Laurence@avantialaw.com. Paul, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Cheers.